And I'm joined now by Representative Andy Jorgensen, a Democrat, and a Republican incumbent, actually, in this district, Republican Evan Wynn. And this is one of those districts that we kind of got to get the numbers right and all that sort of thing, because you're both incumbents. You're both serving in the Assembly right now, so you've both been there in the trenches for what's happened in the last couple of years. But we'll start with Mr. Wynn, of course, because he's the incumbent in this particular district. 3 years later, you know, this area, Whitewater is your home. Mr. Jorgensen calls Fort Atkinson home. That area still feels some of the effects of the GM closure, certainly. And you're, you know, as you move forward, the job issue is going to be a big one here. Let's start with you. What can be one of the things that, if elected, you can do to help get the job push going again?
Well, I think we continue on the same path we started in 2011, is to reduce government overburdensome regulations. Yesterday I was at Husco plant in Whitewater, and they employ about 670 people. And they make pneumatic parts and valves. They ship all over the world. And one of the biggest things they said is we have to decide when we're going to expand, if we're going to expand to Iowa or stay and expand here in Wisconsin. And he said before 2011, they were looking more at Iowa because there's less regulations. There's more incentives to grow a business in Iowa. But he said because of the work your legislature has done, the work you and the governor has done to make this a more business-friendly state, we're looking at expanding here in Wisconsin. And those are the things that we can do, is continue to reduce the overburdensome regulations. One of the bills I had got incorporated into the budget bill. What it did is it said before the bill got passed, there was two types of regulations, one from the federal, one from the state, that told if you were a grocery store owner, you had to keep records for your employees that ran from January through December. The federal government said, well, you have to keep them from October to September. Same data, two different reports. It caused more headache for the businessman, businesswoman to meet compliance. You know, I've talked to bankers, and they say for every dollar they spend on compliance, that's a dollar that they can't spend on loaning money to small businesses. So those are the type of regulations we have to remove so that business can expand and want to come to Wisconsin.
Well, Representative Jorgensen, how do you answer? Was there too much regulation? I mean, is that something you sensed as well, and what is your view on getting jobs back?
Well, Eric, I like going into the businesses that I represent and ask them the question, what can the state do to help? And the question is answered this way a lot of times. We need the workers for tomorrow. We need to have knowledgeable workforce. In this last session, we saw that there was a hit in our technical colleges of over $70 million. We need to invest in our tech colleges because businesses need welders. They need people that know how to run that piece of equipment that is going to be the new piece of equipment on the block. We need to stay ahead of that. We also need to listen. I've had hundreds of listening sessions in my district, and from those listening sessions, I've gotten great ideas like my MAKE bills, marketing, manufacturing, and keeping employees. That too came from a factory owner saying, this is what you can do to help. And this is a bill that helps us get around the country. The state will be the representative of all the different places that can do business and make widget X and maybe sell to Tennessee or beyond. And that's a really good bill, and it's one that had bipartisan support. Also, we have to concentrate on lending and helping our community bankers make those loans to Joe on the corner that they know will create jobs. And so I have had bills that concentrate on that too.
But you don't think there was too much regulation before the 2011 session kind of kicked in?
Well, regulation is something we can always look at, and we have to apply common sense to it. But saying too much, we'd have to take a look and get specific.
And Andy talked about training workers and providing workers for those businesses. Technical funding cut by 30% in the last state budget. Obviously, that's state money, and tech colleges don't get all their money from the state level, but you know, tech colleges have a huge demand right now. They're bursting at the seams, training our future workers. Yet Republicans cut that funding. I just want to get your viewpoint on that. I mean, how do we?
Well, if you actually go back to the 2009 budget, they cut $500 million from public education. They made cuts across the board, trying to balance the budget. That was the budget the Doyle and the Assembly Democrats and the Senate Democrats passed. When we got there, because of the poor budgeting of 2009 and 2010, we were faced with a $3.6 billion deficit. What we did is took the measures and made the hard decisions so that we could pay off that deficit, and now we have a projected surplus. That means in the 2013 budget, we're not having to worry about paying off all those IOUs. We can start focusing on doing the things that we need to do. I talk about, it's about building a house, and it's a foundation. The first foundation you have to have is jobs. It doesn't matter how good the schools are, it doesn't matter how good your roads are. If businesses don't want to come to Wisconsin and create jobs, you can't afford all the rest. So the first thing you have to do is create an atmosphere where businesses want to come here and locate and grow. In the time period of the 2009 budget session, we had about over 1,000 businesses, not jobs, businesses leave the state of Wisconsin. In this biennium, we've seen businesses want to come here, want to grow here. When I was talking to businesses, whether it's Husco, Coca-Cola down in Beloit, they say, you know, they're not that concerned about the technical school. At Husco, they told me they don't take any people out of the tech schools. They take high school students with a high school diploma, and they train them on how to do their job, because their product is so specific that they train them in-house. Their biggest problem, they said, is with public education. They have students graduating high school that can't do basic math, can't have a basic English requirement. And we see that, and it's not so much about throwing money into it, because if you look at the Milwaukee Public School District, they get more money than any other school district. The problem comes in what are we doing to reform curriculum? What are we doing to hold teachers accountable to make sure that the students are learning? And the other problem, they say, is they have people with what they call the soft skills, knowing how to show up on time for work, knowing how to talk to a supervisor, knowing how to do those things that you know you need to do to be successful, whether you're an employee or an employer, and they really lack those skills. And one of the things I thought was nice is down in Beloit with Coca-Cola was this minister who volunteers to give 2 weeks of a boot camp where he teaches these young people to come in how to set an alarm. Most of them don't even have an alarm, but how to set it to make sure you're up on time, how to make sure you have the proper hygiene for being at work, and how you interact with customers. And those are some basic skills that a lot of the business is the common denominator that they're looking for.
Representative Jorgensen, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think it's a harder argument to make that Democrats are the enemy of education. You look at this last budget, education in our public schools took a $1.6 billion hit. And I'll agree, the challenge is to provide those classes that we need to be providing for our young students so they can get into the workforce and hit the ground running. You're not going to be able to do that if you cut education by $1.6 billion. And you're not going to be able to do that if you cut higher education by over $600 million. You're going to make tuition rise. And of course, then you cut technical colleges by over $70 million. And then on top of that, you take millions of dollars from our local schools in Edgerton, Whitewater, Oregon, and beyond, and you take that money and you send it to Milwaukee and Racine for unaccountable voucher schools that are private, and we don't know what they're doing with that money, but it's being taken from our local kids. Our children deserve better.
The next question I'll flip-flop. I'll start with Representative Jorgensen. What do you think separates you from Mr. Wynn in this race? What is the big key difference that voters could take to the polls on Election Day that separates the two of you in your view?
All right, well, I listen. I concentrate on listening. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I'm proud to represent the people that I represent and get those challenges met with the people I represent. I used to work at the General Motors plant, so I have strong roots in this new district. I grew up on a dairy farm, and so I understand the agricultural challenges that our farmers meet. And I've been endorsed by the Farm Bureau, and I've had that endorsement ever since I've had this job. So I listen. I've had hundreds of listening sessions while doing this job. And so proud to do so. I've had them from diners, I've had them in town halls, I've had them in machine sheds, because I truly believe that the answers we need to hear as representatives come from the people we represent, and that's what I do and I do best.
Representative Wynn, your chance to answer that question.
Well, I think the big thing is I don't use the voters and then reject the voters. You know, when I was elected to office, I go to every town meeting. I go to meetings with Department of Transportation. So the people know they can get a hold of me because I give them my cell phone number. It's always with me. They can call me on my cell phone. So I think we both listen to our constituents. But the thing is Representative Jorgensen lives in Fort Atkinson, which is the 33rd Assembly District. And because of redistricting, it made a tough decision for him. He could stay in the 33rd where he lives and continue to try to represent the people he's represented for 6 years. But the district he lives in, went more Republican. And he would also face a challenger of Representative Steve Noss. So he'll say he had to look at where he should do. He said the good fit was to come to the 43rd. So he's turned his back and abandoned the people of the 33rd because he sees the 43rd, which went more Democrat with redistricting, it leans much more Democrat, as a better opportunity for him to keep his job in Madison. Now for me, I live in Whitewater. I would never think to run in the 33rd, even though it leans more Republican, because I live in Whitewater. I represent the people of the 43rd. I've represented them for 2 years. I've grown bonds with people from Larry Harding, the town chair, who has endorsed me, from David Viney, the town chair of Porter, who has endorsed me, from the mayor of Chesmore, from the city of Milton, who has endorsed me, because they see all the work and effort I've put into this job for the past 2 years. So the people know that with me, I'm going to be there and stand for them in and out, day by day. If redistricting changes in another 10 years, which it will, and another district seems to be more fertile ground, I'm not going to abandon the people and leave. I'm not going to use a loophole to decide I can run in this district even though I don't live there. I mean, if I was going to do that, I would probably have decided to move before the election, not say, well, I want to wait to see the outcome of the election. If I win, I'll move into the district. Either you want to be in the district or you don't. And I appreciate Representative Jorgensen's strong roots in the community of that area of Wisconsin. He has family and friends there. I get that, but so do I. I have family and friends, and I've decided to stay there and run for re-election.
Yeah, we have to ask Andy for a reply.
Well, listen, this is nothing new. Every 10 years we have redistricting, and the lines change, and sometimes our representatives are on the outside looking in, or whatever it might be. Let's face it, this imaginary line that's there is 3.5 blocks from my house. My house is for sale. I wish I could sell my house faster, but it's just the way things are. So it's for sale. I intend to move into the district. This district makes a lot of sense for me for many reasons. Having worked at the General Motors plant, I do have strong roots in this district. Working or living on a dairy farm, born and raised in Wisconsin on a dairy farm. This is a rural district, and I am a perfect fit for that. Also, many other variables. My treasurer, my father-in-law, and my mother-in-law, they live in the new district. I have a lot of family and friends that are in this district. Just makes a lot of sense. Now remember, I'm in the 37th now, and a big piece of my district is now in the new 43rd. And that includes the town of Koshkonong, the town of Sumner, and the town of Albion. And I've worked extensively with each one of those areas of my district. In fact, I was the first ever named Legislator of the Year for Lake Koshkonong. So I've done a lot of work and have a lot of things I still want to get done with the folks that live there. But this is a perfect fit for me. It's unfortunate. The Republicans blew my district as it is up into 4 different pieces. I think they wanted to get rid of me, Eric. And so this is what I had to do. And I'm hoping that I can represent the folks from the 43rd.
Well, aside from that,
I would say, that's what I think is the difference between me and Representative Jorgensen, is how we look at things. He says a big portion of his old district is in the 43rd. Basically what I heard him say was it was the town of Sumner, the town of Koshkonong, and the town of Albion. The 43rd has 19 towns, 3 villages, and 3 cities. When I actually looked at it, it was only 12% of the 43rd changed. So to me, 12% isn't big. To Representative Jorgensen, obviously 12% represents a big area, because the area he lives in, Fort Atkinson, which includes Jefferson, is about 50% of his old district. So that must be gigantic compared to his terms.
You can look at it geographically, but I look at it the people that are in these districts and what I've done and what I still hope to do.
And the voters can listen to both of your words on this topic from this and make an educated decision on election day. Let's move on. This is a unique race that both of you have experience in the Assembly. You've been there the last couple of years when all this stuff was going on around the state. Civility, I think, is what the voters want. I think we can all agree on that. I'll start, I guess, with Andy. I don't remember where we started last, but how do we get civility back in the chamber, in the Assembly, that has been lacking really in state government, in all levels of government? It's not just the state, but how can we regain civility so voters can expect work, compromises, things to get done?
Well, the last word you used was compromise. We have to be willing to compromise. To understand it, yes, we have a point of view, but we also have to have that willingness to listen. And I've got a history of listening. And I've got a history of getting things done with Republicans. We're not going to agree on everything, but we have to find out where that middle ground is. And once we do, I think we can get things done, and we can do what the people want. I have a history of this last session. I was the lead Democrat on a bill that made K2 a dangerous drug that our young people are using, getting from gas stations. I worked with Republican Gary Buys on the other side to get that bill accomplished, and we got it done together. In the past, I've been a lead author on working on serious topics like sexual predators and moving into the 21st century and making sure that we keep our children safe on the internet. Worked with Republicans and got that done unanimously. So I have a history of doing that. Also, after the big blow up in Madison and after the brat fry and all the recalls were over, I met with the governor one-on-one, because I truly believe that we can sit down and have a talk on what's important. And we talked about my make bills, my jobs bills, and we found out that we did have a common interest, and this is the type of thing we want to move forward as a state and get people back to work and get them jobs. So I have the willingness to sit down and make sure we can be heard from both sides and compromise when we have to, and at the end of the day, do something together.
Representative Jorgensen mentioned some stuff he's worked on and in a bipartisan factor as well. Could you do the same?
Well, yes, I have proved I've done it. I had 7 bills as a freshman that got signed into law. Out of the whole 7, there was only 1 no vote. I appreciate Representative Jorgensen not only speaking on behalf of one of my bills, but voting for my bills. So that shows you I can be bipartisan there with the legislation I draft. The second thing, I've been the lead author for the Republicans on about 10 Democrat bills. I've also worked with Senator Lassa on a bill that dealt with what I think is one of the other concerns in the district besides just jobs, is health care. This bill would have dealt with Medicare Part D. Also, with all the bills that I wrote, I had other Democrats to be the second on the bill, or to take the bill up like Senator Lassa did, one of my veterans bills that Representative Jorgensen praised on the Assembly floor, to take the lead on it in the Senate. But I think that it's right what Representative Jorgensen says. We have to listen to each other and we have to talk to each other. But it's also about how you conduct yourself on the Assembly floor. See, because I remember, and my colleagues on my side of the aisle remember Representative Jorgensen charging with his fists raised, yelling and screaming on the Assembly floor, you know, with such anger on his face that spittle was flying and getting on Representative Steve Noss. I don't believe he's ever apologized to Representative Noss for that, but we see that. And that makes it hard for us to say, yeah, we can trust Andy, we will want to work with him, because when you do that type of behavior on the Assembly floor, it sends 2 messages. You really don't believe in civility, and the second is, what if you're a constituent in his district and you believe the budget repair bill was a good bill? Do you feel comfortable calling him and talking to him?
No, obviously I have to give you a chance to respond. We're almost out of time, but just a response to
let's go back to that morning on the floor. It was in the middle of the night, and a vote, you know, there are very few things that I get upset about. But this is a job where you have the honor of voting on behalf of almost 60,000 people. And when you push that button, that is quite an honor. It's overwhelming, really. And on that middle of the night morning, or it was like 1 in the morning, that vote was taken away from me. It was taken away from the people that I represent. It was done in 17 seconds. A rule wasn't even followed. The rules were thrown in the garbage that night. And a vote was taken, and I wasn't able to vote for the people that I represent. So yes, I did get upset. That was a shameful act. But it's time to learn from that. I think we've all learned from that. I know I have. And it's time to move on.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. It was a spirited debate, and I'll let the voters decide on November 6th. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.